Alright guys, in this video I want to explain to you what FlexWatt heat tape is. And I just happen to have some heat tape right here, and you're probably wondering, what in the world is that stuff? If you're not into reptiles, you probably have never seen this stuff before. It's pretty wild. You can cut it to size, and this is basically a heating pad for your reptiles. And it's a component where you can put the cord on here, cut it to any size, hook it up to a thermostat, dial in the temperatures, and put it anywhere you want for heat for your reptiles. And I was talking about FlexWatt heat tape. This is actually not FlexWatt. FlexWatt's just a brand name. This is kind of this is the heat tape that Reptile Basic sells, a really high quality heat tape. And you really have to be careful. There's some people selling a really cheap version of the heat tape. Some of it won't get hot enough, and you have to really be careful of the cheap stuff. I would go with either FlexWatt or go with something like this from Reptile Basics. And the way it works is, let me show you just kind of one end. This is kind of a mistake that I ordered. I actually ordered some connections on the end, and Reptile Basics will actually take a cord that plugs into the wall and connect the ends to either one of these on the gold contacts, and they connect the positive to one, the negative to one, and then you plug the cord into a thermostat, and then the thermostat probe attaches to the FlexWatt, and it controls the temperature very precisely. And I actually have some that are pre-made that I use for my ARS display cases, and let me show you those. Those are right here. I have them all kind of all together. This is 3 of them right here. Let me just unwrap this, and you can kind of see how they're connected at the very end. So this is what Reptile Basic does as far as connecting the ends onto here. And there's several different ways you can connect the ends. And Reptile Basics, what they do is they actually take like a hole punch and punch it in the heat tape right along on the gold part here. And then on the end of the electrical cord, what they do is they put a little eye, like you can, I've seen little, you could solder on like a little metal eye that you can use for like electrical connections. And then what they do is they take a rivet and they put it through the eye and the hole, and they use a little hand clamper, and they clamp it on there, and it rivets the cord right to the heat tape. And now the problem is you have exposed electrical cord and you want some kind of protection, so they put this little, it's like a little rubber pad that folds over to protect it so you don't get shocked from your heat tape. And I've seen a lot of different people set these up a lot of different ways. Some people will actually, I've seen some people actually solder directly to the gold. I actually saw YouTube, I couldn't believe the YouTube video. The guy was actually soldering the wires directly on this stuff. It was amazing. I didn't even think he could do something like that. And then some people will actually sell a cord with a metal clamp, and when you just put the clamp right on the gold here, and then you hit it with like a sledgehammer and it clamps it right on. And then sometimes I've seen like a little clear plastic clip that clips over. You can actually see right through it, see the cord in there instead of something black. But it doesn't really matter either way you do it, as long as you securely connect your cord to the heat tape. And the thing you really don't want to be careful of is that it doesn't come apart, because if it comes apart, then you risk the shock factor. You definitely don't want anyone getting shocked or anything starting on fire, that's for sure. And let me show you, I have one here that's kind of a prefab heat pad. If you go to the pet store, this is what you'll buy, this is what you'll find. And this is, I actually bought this on Amazon. This is kind of the heat pad that I started with. And it's exactly the same thing, but the thing I like about this is that it has a really professional connection right there, where it connects really securely to the heat pad, so it's not going to come apart, and no one's going to get shocked. You're not going to run into any problems. And that's kind of what I started with on all my tanks. I actually started with glass aquariums, and I use these pretty much solely on all my glass aquariums. And then I switched over to these racks, these ARS racks. And the funny thing is if these actually use like a FlexWatt heat tape, but what they do is they take a long metal it's like a flat metal piece that has edges on it, and then underneath, up inside, they put the FlexWatt heat tape in there, and they attach it in there. And at first, I mean, if you look at it, it just looks like one big heating panel that the tubs slide on, but if you flip it over and you look underneath, it actually has the FlexWatt attached to it. So the way you really need to use it, you definitely don't want to take your FlexWatt or your heat pad and plug it directly in the wall. That is not the way to do it, because it'll get too hot. And as a matter of fact, some of these say they're rated for certain temperatures. I would definitely not trust the rating on any of these heat pads, or plug like a heat tape directly into the wall. What you really need is a thermostat, and I would highly recommend something like this. This is a VE300, and what it does is you just plug the heat tape into one of the outlets on your thermostat, and then the thermostat has a probe, and the probe attaches to your heat tape. And I would say probably one of the biggest questions that I've ever seen as far as the heat tape and the probe and the thermostat is where to place the probe. And a lot of people say, well, I place the probe in the tub because that's where I want to control the temperature, in the tub. And I was actually looking at some of the manufacturers' websites, and they said absolutely do not ever place the probe in the tub or anywhere except directly attached to the heat tape, which I thought was interesting. We've had all this conversation and all these discussions about where to place the probe, and here it is on the manufacturer's website to place it directly on the heat tape, which is interesting. I think the theory is that if you take the probe and say, for example, if you put the probe up in the tub, what's going to happen is when the temperature of the heat tape goes down to a certain value, the thermostat is going to turn on the heat tape, and the heat tape is going to be at a maximum temperature until that probe actually feels the temperature that you have it set at. So it's going to get really hot, but there's a distance where that heat tape's burning really hot until it takes the probe to the right temperature. And the problem is they say the heat tape should not go above 105 degrees. So the problem is if you take the probe and you move it up in the tub, that heat tape is going to be on maximum until the probe actually changes temperature. And that means it's almost like taking the heat tape and plugging it directly in the wall, and then letting it heat up really hot and then unplugging it when the probe reaches the certain temperature. And that's definitely not what you want to do. So if you actually had the probe on the heat tape would never get above the set temperature of your thermostat. And typically, for a hot spot, I'd say, for my snakes, I set it about 90 degrees, and I think that's pretty common. Some people I've seen go up to 94, 95 maybe for a hot spot, but you should never really go to 105 degrees. It says you can damage your heat tape if you go above 105. So in addition to heat tape in the back of your reptile tubs, you can also put heat tape inside of a reptile incubator, and that's what I built right here. I have the heat tapes on the sides, and actually I started with the pads on the back. You can see I have the prefab pads. I started with a pad here and it wasn't enough, so I put another prefab pad on the bottom. That wasn't enough, and so then I put heat tape along the sides, and I'm running this down on a VE100. And the problem with this setup is some of the heat pads have a different wattage, and they'll get hotter faster. So what you want to do, I've always heard that you're not supposed to run different size and different wattages on the same controller, because what happens is one can get really hot while the other ones are a little bit cool. So what I kind of did is as I plugged them all in and I set the probe in there, and before the heat panels got to the probe temperature and they were all heating up as fast as possible, what I did is I just took my hand and I felt all of the heat panels, and I found out that the ones on the side get a lot hotter than the ones on the back. So these get hotter faster, those in the back will get hotter a little bit slower because it's a little different material. So what you really want to do is, if you're using different heat panels, different heat tape on the sides and the back, what you really want to do is take your probe and put it on the one that gets hottest the fastest, because what that'll do is it'll actually control it so it doesn't overheat, and that's really the big thing. And what I do is I just put the probe and I just taped it on with clear tape just right there. It's pretty simple, and it pretty much keeps the temperature spot on in here. And the one thing I would say with a vertical incubator like this is that there's a lot of temperature variation from the top to the bottom, and just a few degrees from the top to the bottom kind of makes my hatch rate a little bit different. You know, the eggs up on top maybe hatch a little bit faster than the eggs on the bottom. And you know, I just kind of thought of this. What I could do is I could kind of rotate the eggs through, you know, so I could, you know, move them up a shelf and then take the top ones, move them down like every week or so to kind of equal them out, and then they'll all hatch at the same amount of time. It doesn't really matter, I guess. You know, some hatch a little bit earlier, some hatch a little bit later, and it seems like the hatch rate's always fine. But I actually tried to fix that problem last year. I put 2 little fans in the bottom to circulate the air, and the problem was the fans were adding some additional heat. And in the heat of the summer, when it was like 85 degrees in this room, and I wanted this incubator 90 degrees, the problem was that the heat of those 2 fans actually increased the temperature above 90, and my thing was alarming. I was like, what in the world's going on? This, you know, is it my heat strips or is it my thermostat? I couldn't figure it out, and finally I disconnected my fans. Sure enough, it was the motors from the fans that was adding heat, and it was pretty much out of control. So I got rid of my fans this year, and I'm going to try it that way. So here is Lucy, my reticulated python, and she's been going back and forth. I think she's ready for a rat. She's kind of giving me the eye like she wants to eat a rat, and she actually has heat tape right under her belly, right down about here. Just there's a little spot right here that has heat tape. That is set to 88 degrees, and then in addition to that, I actually have it's like an infrared heat panel up on the top that radiates heat down. It's different than a heat pad. It's slightly different technology, but I do use a heat pad in here on the bottom. She's in a 6-foot enclosure on my pool table. She's a really big snake. She probably weighs about 65 or 70 pounds. She is a monster, and she is breeding this year. I'm hoping to get some eggs. I'm actually thinking about giving her a rat. Maybe I'll do that at the end, see if she'll take a rat. All right, so take a look at this. This is the back of my hatchling rack. I just spun it around, and I kind of wanted to show you what this looks like. So if we push the tubs up, I know there's no snakes in this row, so they won't get away. And this is the panel that comes with the ARS racks. And what I really like about this is it's really professional, really heavy duty. It has some really good connections on this end right here, and if you flip it over, what you see underneath, sure enough, you got some heat tape on the bottom, and it's all glued on there really nice and taped, and it has everything all together. This is really professional. It looks really nice. They use some kind of glue, it looks like. And this is actually, it looks like thgheat.com. And I think this is actually where I'm getting it from. Reptile Basics is the THG Heat. And then they have Velcro on there that holds the whole panel in place, which is really nice. I really like this setup. It's really, this is like the best of the best. This is pretty much the best rack that you can buy. You know, it's really expensive, but I mean, this is really high quality stuff, and everything fits perfect. The tubs fit right on top of it and everything. It's really, really nice. All right, guys, so I couldn't resist feeding Lucy a rat. She is keyed in, and let me unlock this enclosure. I have a rat freshly prepared. Let me throw it in there. Ooh, this could get a little hairy, huh? I don't know. I don't know if I want to throw it in there like that. Let's see. Yeah, that's... I think I'm going to throw it in over here. Yeah, you gotta watch those rejects because they'll come flying out at you. It's kind of, sometimes it's kind of frightening. And sometimes she's a little slow. She'll definitely eat it. She's just gotta kind of think about it a little bit. All right, I'm thinking about giving this rat a little nudge to see if she'll take it. Look at that. Woo! That was a pretty close call. She almost got my hand that time. She wanted a little action. She didn't want to sit there and look at it. Woo! That was pretty close. Okay, so that wraps up our discussion of heat tape and a little feeding action from Lucy. I'm actually hoping that Lucy lays a clutch of eggs this year. I paired her up and I finished pairing her up, and now she'll either lay it or she won't. And now that she's feeding, I'm not sure. Usually when snakes are developing eggs, they go off of food. So I'm thinking maybe a 50-50 chance that she'll lay a clutch of eggs. But I'm really looking forward at some point of getting a whole clutch of reticulated python eggs. She could probably lay up to 40 eggs at a time. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.